I'm Sean,
I'm Rhonda.
and we want to talk with you today about two components in a relationship to effectively work through issues, and that is expressiveness and flexibility.
You know, Doctors Les and Leslie Parrott mentioned this in one of their books, and we thought this was a pretty interesting concept. The degree to which we are expressive and the degree to which we are flexible, and the combination of those two affects the outcome, basically, our ability and our spouse's ability to interact with us in discussing
You know,
issues.
some of us are just a little more verbal and expressive about what we're thinking and feeling than others, and being able
Yeah.
to understand where your spouse is on that spectrum, being able to get the information.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that.
Okay.
So, if you are the one who wants to share an issue and you are either not very expressive or you are very expressive, let's talk about that angle first.
Okay. Well, the one that's very expressive may have to tone some things down. They may have to learn how to reword some things. The one
Yeah.
that is not as expressive is probably going to have to learn how to open up, how to find words to attach with the thoughts and
Yeah.
feelings there. The other spouse may have to help coax them to, come out, open up, let me hear what you're
Yeah.
thinking.
So you might want to kind of gauge, where am I on expressiveness? Where is my spouse on expressiveness? And how do we need to find like a balance there? Because if you're overly expressive, you're probably coming across as aggressive. If you're under expressive, you're probably coming across as withdrawing and avoiding.
Yeah.
What if the spouse is less expressive or more expressive?
Yeah, obviously you can have problems on both ends of the spectrum. And so
Yeah.
definitely the one that's not as expressive, if they're not letting their spouse know, this is problematic, when you use that tone of voice, when you have that facial expression, they just kind of keep it inside,
Yeah.
then there's going to be more likely build up until there's maybe an explosion. And the
Yeah.
other one's like, I had no idea there was anything going on behind the
Right.
scenes.
And so the if your spouse is less expressive, you, like Sean said a while ago, may need to coax them out, create a safe environment, maybe ask some open-ended questions, and be quiet. Give them time to they may be an internal processor. If your spouse is very expressive, they're probably an external processor. They probably think through things as they are saying it with you, so you kind of want to weigh that into the picture. But maybe you can say some things to help, like, could you summarize that for me? Would you mind just giving me the headline so
Oh,
I
that's
can
good.
connect with
Yeah.
your point?
Yeah, sometimes we can use so many words, our spouse can get lost in what's the like you said, headline. What's
Right.
the bottom
Where are we
line?
even going here?
Yeah, yeah. So can you just say it in fewer words so I can kind of obviously
Yeah.
the expressive one is wanting them to catch some of the feeling and everything
Yeah.
that they're experiencing.
So basically, whoever is more expressive is using too many words, likely too much emotion to share a message.
Yeah.
The less expressive person is not using enough words to get the message
They
apart.
could be expecting
across.
their spouse is going to read their mind.
Yeah.
To some
You should
extent.
just know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
no, we don't know.
Right. So we do need to put those things into words. The
Right.
other component is flexibility, and that is our ability to work with what troubles our spouse.
Ooh, and this is huge. I think the more couples get distressed in the relationship, the more they're arguing, the less flexible they become.
We need to be able to empathize with what's going on with our spouse, to put ourselves in their shoes and feel what they're feeling.
So, when we look at it, we can look at, if I'm the speaker, how flexible or inflexible am I? When I look at my spouse, how flexible or inflexible is my spouse? So, if you're the speaker, you want to evaluate your own flexibility. When you hear something from your spouse's heart, how willing to connect with that and make a change, make an adjustment are you?
Yeah, if we're just really stuck on our own perspective and we're not really willing to see something from a different angle, that's not being flexible. We need to, in a relationship, there has to be some give and take.
So if you're inflexible, you're probably not going to find one.
No,
out of two.
no.
You're probably going to pretty much remain two.
Well, there's this word compromise,
Yeah.
and so being willing to see something that you don't see, being willing to acknowledge that my spouse sees things differently. Maybe I don't see that.
Yeah. So if you find that you tend to be a little more on the inflexible side, maybe you don't hear what your spouse is saying, maybe you get defensive pretty quickly. Maybe you are pushing for your own agenda. Maybe you consistently see it as black and white. You don't see that your spouse really brings anything positive or good to the table. You want to start softening your presentation. You want to start asking questions to make sure you're really catching what your spouse is trying to contribute.
This all comes down to the two shall be one. That's what he said in the Bible about the marriage. It's he plus she equals we. So a marriage is made up of both the male perspective and the female perspective, and those two combined equal unity and we.
Yeah. So let's think about then, what if you are the one that's very flexible? Maybe you have a tendency to just give in. Well, it's more important to my spouse, so it doesn't matter. And maybe you feel invisible in the relationship because you're so flexible. This is the other ditch on the other side of the road.
Yeah, true.
You want to be a little bit more assertive. You want to be able to say, I have a thought and opinion on that too. Would you like to hear it?
So it's kind of like not losing your identity, being able to present by your expressiveness, this is who I am, this is how I feel, this is what I expect, this is what I think should happen.
Yeah.
But also having the flexibility to say, and what do you bring to the table?
Right. Well, what if you see that your spouse is inflexible or flexible? If your spouse is inflexible, you could try saying things along the lines of, I have a thought too. Would you be open to hearing it?
Yeah.
Make sure you're not coming across as pushy. Make sure there's no tone in it that's escalating your spouse or shutting your spouse down. Obviously, you can't force your spouse to hear you.
Is there a different way that I can present my viewpoint that would not close you? And so a lot of times it is our presentation. We may need to change our delivery of what we're presenting to make it more appealing to our spouse.
Yeah. What if you see that your spouse is very flexible? They're agreeable to everything. Maybe they don't really feel that their opinion is very important to you or to anybody. They may have a self-esteem issue. You might have to draw them out. There can be all sorts of combinations of expressiveness and flexibility. Those bring their own sets of problems. So think about, which one am I of the two, and what does my particular combination look like? You might imagine yourself communicating with somebody else that you would define as being like me. I'm probably very expressive and middle of the road maybe on flexibility. I think that I am pretty flexible, but I definitely have my moments where I'm tempted to be less flexible.
Right.
So, what scenario does that put me in? And then imagine what it might feel like to be your spouse.
Yeah. So the better we understand ourselves and where we fall into this category, and understanding our spouse, we can maybe not have so many surprises when it comes to working through an issue.